Hey guys, Argent here, with a reactionary review slash plot telling the story of the Throne of Glass series, and we're going to talk about the third one in the series today, Heir of Fire. So, Heir of Fire is the third one in the series. If you recall from the previous videos, the end of uh, what was it, Crown of Midnight? The end of Crown of Midnight saw the end of Serlina and Kale's relationship, with Selena being sent away by Kale, or is it Cole? I can never remember. Cole? Cole being, sending her away to go and kill the royal family of one of the last free kingdoms, in order to get her out of the country and away from the king. Kale also figured out that she was the heir to the largest of the conquered kingdoms, Terrasen. Terrasen was the largest kingdom on the continent prior to Otterland conquering it, and when it was conquered, instead of being formally conquered, there was an assassination, which the book goes into detail of, where the King of Otterland killed both of Selena's parents and attempted to kill her, but she got away. Um, and was found by the King of Assassins. So, because the kingdom wasn't conquered and there was no war, the army is still intact. It just kind of dispersed, and the soldiers are hiding out. So, if Selena ever comes back, she can and takes her position as queen of not Otterland, queen of Terrasen, then she can call the army back, and the rest of the world will rise up and revolt over her. Um, Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, Otterland continues its inexorable advance. The death of Euphemia, as we've talked about in the previous book, has sent Selena into a catatonic depression. It's also had the effect of um, so Selena is in a catatonic depression. There are uprisings in the various slave camps, and Otterland has slaughtered all the slaves in the Empire, which continues to make Dorian really depressed. So we'll start with Dorian because most of this book is about other things. So Kale, for most of this book, starts to work with the rebels. Even though him and Selena are no longer in a relationship um, together, he still loves her and he still wants to protect her. So he starts helping the rebels, and indirectly, I think he wants her to regain her throne. He's begun to have big moral problems with the King of Otterland, in particular after the genocide of all the slaves that they captured. So Kale spends most of the book working with one of Selena's cousins, who is a general for Otterland. It's not very interesting. We do find out that the King of Otterland has these black rings that he gives people that lets him mind control them. Dorian, for the duration of this book, just keeps on being Dorian. He keeps investigating his newly found magical powers more and more. He has kind of a cute romance with a healer. He keeps hurting himself, and there's a rather beautiful woman who's a healer in the castle, and he gets into a relationship with her, and over the course of the book, he really grows up. He stops being a womanizer. He stops a lot of his kind of petulant, childlike behavior, and really starts acting like a king. Not that it really matters. So that's largely what happens in Otterland. I'll get to the ending eventually. Otterland has also recruited the various witch clans, and they have had the king has been breeding wyverns, which are pretty much like wyverns and anything else. They have scorpion tails, and they're kind of dragon-like. So the witches, when the king shut off magic to the world, the witches lost their immortality and lost their ability to fly on brooms. So the king of Otterland says, "Look, I'm having trouble fighting the Fae and half-Fae kingdoms. So the deal is, you will be my air cavalry. You can ride the wyverns, you can go and destroy my enemies, and when the war's over, you can keep the wyverns and you can go back and retake your own kingdom." So they agree to that, and we have a large portion of the book is about the heir to one of the witch clans, um, trying to kind of claw her way to the top. Um, she winds up picking a wyvern who's actually the weakest wyvern, or the smallest wyvern, who's used as actually a bait beast for the rest of the wyverns. Um, he's used to kind of like put the other wyverns in line to try and get them to just focus on trying to kill him because otherwise the wyverns will eat the people. So other wyverns like just take bites out of him, and he's there as a distraction. But he breaks his chains and he kills the biggest, strongest wyvern through cunning. So the maid witch picks him to be her mount, and she leads. I think her group is called the 13, and they're like the best warriors in the witch clans. And she kind of leads them to win the war games or whatever, and they become the dominant clan, and she becomes supreme commander of the witch clans. So that's just a big summary. That part of the book's not bad, actually. The witches are kind of interesting because they're a bit different from other witches. I'm not sure if they're a separate species or not. Because I'm not sure if they're like fae and they're like humanoids, or if they're just humans who have kind of twisted themselves with dark magic. But the witches worship the three-faced god, um, who's, I don't know, some strange kind of goddess. And she's the goddess of all the witches. They used to have magic, but they lost that. All of them, I'm not sure if they're born this way or if it happens, but all of them have iron teeth and iron claws. I'm not sure if they pull out their nails and teeth and brand iron onto them, or they're just not human and they just are born that way, but they have that, and they also seem to drink blood. Um, I would assume they're all female, so I would assume they reproduce by having sex with human males. A lot of them are ugly, some of them are beautiful. It's a bit confusing in the book. So the witches are pretty interesting. I'll give them credit. She did something kind of original with them. They're kind of an interesting take on a matriarchal society. So then we have Selena. And when we get to Selena, we get to the big problem with Heir. There's parts of it that are the best in the series and parts of it that are the worst in the series. The biggest problem is it's too damn long. It's longer than like the other two books, I think combined. This was a really long book, and there was no reason for it to be that long, as this was just a build-up book. One or two kind of important things happen, but for the most part, this book was training montages. Actually, this book's about 50% training montages. No, more than that, like 70-80% training montages, because Selena basically spends this whole book in a big extended training montage. And so she spends the book in a training montage, and then the witches spend their part of the book in the training montage, and then we kind of have some boring intrigue in the capital, which is identical to the last book. So let's get into Selena. So she goes and talks to the Queen of the Fae, who's a distant, I think, who's her aunt, and she doesn't trust her because the Fae are backstabbing cocksuckers. And the Queen of the Fae is like, I'll tell you where the word gates are, because Selena has to get the 3 word gates and gain control of them to take away the King of Otterland's power. So the Queen's like, I'll tell you where the word gates are, but you have to complete your training and become the person you were meant to become. Apparently, Selena was supposed to have training as a child because her powers are so strong. And when magic left, she was relieved because of how excessively overpowered she was. So that happened, and they didn't want her to go train with her aunt because they figured her aunt would gain control over her. I don't know, it's not that interesting. So they put her in the care of Rowan. Now, first off, Rowan's a fucking lame name. It sounds too much like Ronin, and there are Rowan, whatever the Wandering Samurai is. Raruni? I've heard different pronunciations of it. So he is a Fey warrior, and he's kind of like the most generic male young adult protagonist possible. He's ruggedly handsome. He has scars. He's a warrior. He's kind of aggressive and patriarchal. He's really masculine. He doesn't take shit from anyone. He humiliates and attacks the protagonist. So the Queen of the Fae is like, all half Fae have to go through training to develop their magical abilities, and the half Fae who have the most magical abilities are allowed to go to the Kingdom of the Fae. All the others live on this fortress on the outskirts of Fae territory, which is really weird. So they send Selena to like this fortress, and she has to work in the kitchens. And then Rowan tries to like train her in magic, and he starts kind of like training her in magic, and it turns out that like all kind of Mary Sue's, Selena actually has legendary power that can only be rivaled by the gods, because she's descendant of some ancient warrior king who had superpowers, who was able to defeat all the demons and close the word gates, etc. So it's kind of like Breaking Bad at this part. Basically, Rowan's just like, apply yourself, apply yourself. You have to use your power to save the world. And Selena's like, I'm so depressed, I don't want to do anything. I'm a failure. And Selena's basically kind of catatonically depressed for most of this book. Rowan is a massive douche. He doesn't ask Selena really anything about her past. He doesn't really give a shit. He just kind of degrades her. He beats the shit out of her a couple times. He's excessively kind of hard and brutal on her, but it's all for her own good, I guess. And then eventually, kind of, there's a turnaround because he kind of because he thinks she's like a spoiled princess, because she has such expensive clothing and weapons and has a lot of money. But then part of the way through the book, she almost dies, and he's cleaning her wounds, and he realizes that her back is completely destroyed by the whip. And she's like, oh, where'd you get that? And she's like, oh, I was in a slave camp for a year, and I was beaten daily. And he's like, oh, you're not really spoiled at all. I've kind of been a massive douche this whole time. And it's kind of nice that there's the acknowledgement of that. Like, oftentimes there wouldn't be one. And they find out that Rowan has, like, an angsty past. The love of his life died because of bullshit reasons. He's sworn an eternal oath for all of his immortal life to serve her aunt, who's kind of a bitch. And he's bound to that. And he really wants to be free and to serve someone better, someone like Selena, but he can't. So they have like the training montage, and the training montage goes on forever. It's not that bad. I mean, the relationship's kind of interesting. The banter's not bad. I'm predisposed to hate Rowan, though. And even though he kind of redeems himself, he still kind of does. I'm sick of these fucking love triangles. I'm sick of these fucking polyandrous relationships. The pairing was very clearly established in the last book as Selena and Cale, or Cole, or whatever his name is. She lost her virginity to him. They were in love. Cole had this big dream about taking her away and marrying her and having lots of kids together and having a normal life. But Selena almost immediately is like, I can't be with Cale anymore because he was. What was it that he did? He didn't tell her that there was a threat against Euphemia's life when Euphemia had basically arranged her own assassination. So he didn't tell her something he didn't really know, and didn't stop the assassination of her friend who set up her own assassination. So she's like, I hate you, Cale. You're my enemy, now and forever. And he's like, oh no, I can't be with you anymore because I know you're part Fae, even though I kind of already knew that because, yeah. But, yeah, their relationship broke down. Dorian and her relationship never really got started. I actually liked Dorian and her. I thought they were the best pairing. They were both royals, so I think it would be kind of interesting, like a dynamic to have them like co-rulers later on. and then their child like inherits Otterland and Terrasen, kind of like bringing an end to the whole thing. It's kind of like poetry. It's like they rhyme, as George Lucas would say, but they didn't want to do that. Instead, we have to have like superhuman Fey Elfman who has ice powers. So they're fire and ice. You get it? Kind of like a song of ice and fire. I mean, this is literally like every young adult book put together in combination with Game of Thrones. The strange thing, though, is as kind of generic as a lot of this is, the writing quality is a lot better. The dialogue's a lot better. There's kind of more interesting world building. Um, the characters are more obviously flawed. People don't act in like really like cringe-worthily irrational ways. Selena actually has like a complete mental breakdown from the events of the past few books. Like just how fucking bad her life has gotten. That actually affects her. Kale's actually depressed that he's lost the woman that he loves. Dorian's actually kind of depressed. Rowan is actually kind of realistic. It's kind of funny because as generic as it is, and a lot of the things that these books kind of get wrong, I think they do a better job of kind of creating three-dimensional, believable characters than most in their genre, and of not just. Even though Selena has a lot of aspects of being a Mary Sue, she's also kind of self-entitled. She's kind of cowardly. She's self-absorbed. She's kind of rude to people, and it's not just like people don't just love her for it. A lot of people find like criticize her and kind of hate her, and she gets shit from other characters, which kind of makes her different. So eventually, what happens is her and Rowan grow close. They have kind of this ambiguous relationship where they like sleep together, but they haven't kissed or had sex or something. So that stuff happened. And after that stuff happened, Selena finds some ring which was worn by the ex-husband of the Fairy Queen, or some bullshit like that, which later in the book she trades for Rowan's freedom. So Rowan is free to swear an oath to her and become her eternal servant instead of the Queen's. Yeah, I saw that one coming a mile away. I don't know, it's kind of a plot device. So they're going well. They're starting to get together. Selena's controlling her super awesome magical fire powers. It turns out, though, that the King of Otterland has sent an army to destroy the fortress and invade the Fey lands. So it's an army of Otterland soldiers who wear cold iron. Fey magic is ineffective against cold iron, and cold iron swords will prevent them from regenerating. They'll have to heal at a normal rate instead of accelerated Fey rate. They also sent the four demon princes, kind of like the four kings of New Londo. The four demon princes each possess a like a dead body or just some soldier, so they're in human form. And Selena basically has to take them all on by herself, and she does fairly well against them. There's kind of a really interesting angsty thing where they mentally attack her and try to feast on her sorrow, but she's so depressed, etc. They can't because she embraces kind of, as opposed to resisting them, she kind of embraces the oblivion they bring, and then she just kind of explodes in a ball of fire and kills them. Because she's the descendant of the original king who sealed the word gates and prevented demons from entering the realm. So she is the heir of fire. She possesses the ability to kill demons with her superpowers, and she's the strongest person in the world, other than the King of Otterland, who has control of the word gates, which give him like magical powers for some reason. I don't really get how having a gate gives you magical powers, but it does. So they beat them off. They go to the Queen of the Fae. Selena figures out that the third word gate, because there's one in a volcano, there's one near the king's throne, and there's one that was an amulet she was given as a child, which was taken by the King of Assassins that she needs to go and get back. So that's kind of where that storyline ends. The witches get fully trained up. Their training montage is over. They're ready to go and invade wherever it is they're going to invade. I don't know. There's a lot of kingdom names, and I kind of get them confused. So anyway, so back in Otterland, Dorian confronts his father. Well, more like his father finds out that Dorian's lover is actually a spy passing information to the rebels, and he beheads her in front of Dorian, who attempts to attack his father with his magic. His father just bats him aside and puts a mind control collar on Dorian. Yes, I said that, a mind control collar. And Kale manages to fight his way out, telling Dorian that he loves him like a brother. No, it's not gay. So that stuff happens, and then Dorian is now a slave. Otterland is victorious. News of Selena's, though, refused to call her by whatever her name is, Aelin Galathinius. She has like 5 different names, like Euphemia or whatever her name is, gave her another name. I hate these fucking female characters with a dozen names. Might as well be Daenerys Stormborn. So word that the rightful Queen of Terrasen has returned, and that she's going to liberate the world from Otterland. And we head towards kind of the final conflict, the final countdown. Selena's going to get the last word gauge. She's going to use her super awesome Sue powers to fight the King of Otterland and bring justice to the world with her super beefy Fae warrior at her side. So, I still kind of like the book. The problem was it was too long. If this is going to be a book where, like, the plot's not resolved and it's just build up for the next book, which could be the climax or the conclusion, it really should have been, like, 25% shorter. A lot of the training montages could be shortened. A lot of the food scenes could have been shortened. Some of the bathing scenes could have been taken out. Some of the boring subplots could have been taken out. There is a lot of real emotion. The book really shines in the last third, but the first 2/3 are kind of slow and boring. I can see kind of why the author decided to do 4 parts for this, and I can't really blame her. The way the story kind of turned out, and the way the story turned out is okay in my opinion. The problem with it is that the kind of the installments are too long. Like, I get that it has to be 4 or 5 parts, because there's rather logical ending points. Like, each book kind of ends at a major story arc. So I think the books are good in terms of what they cover. They're just too long, given that it's going to be longer than a trilogy. I kind of feel you're only really entitled to write really long books if it's going to be a trilogy. If it's going to be longer than that, you have to give your audience a bit of a break and make the books a bit longer, at least. Anyways, overall, I thought it was a good book. It was a lot of fun. The Fae apparently allow gay marriage, which is really weird. I thought they were kind of a traditionalist society, but apparently they aren't actually a traditional society. Or maybe that's like kind of the new thing that traditionalists are doing these days. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll try to read Queen of Shadows at some point, because I'm sure you're all dying to hear how this series ends. I hope I'm giving kind of some of the story away. I know there wasn't too much political stuff here. I covered a lot of the political stuff for this book in the previous review, just because I did the previous review after I read this book. So, I'll talk to you guys later. This is Argent Templar signing out.